Hey, it's Hannah here from the My Planet, My Voice team. Welcome to Climate 101, your three-part guide to understanding the basics of climate change and what you can do to be part of the solution. These days, the words climate change seem to show up everywhere, and sometimes we hear conflicting information about what it is and what's causing it. So what actually is climate change? Is it extreme pollution? The end of the world? A big hoax just to scare people? Well, today I'm on a mission to find out. Let's go get some answers. All right, so right now I am at Sonoma State University. Let's go take a walk around and see if I can get some people to help me understand what the heck climate change actually is. And if you want to learn something new, there's no place that's better than a college campus, right? Let's go. Hi, do you have a minute to talk about climate change with me? Excuse me, do you have a minute to talk about climate change? Do you guys have a minute to talk about climate change? I just feel like there's a lot of confusion about what climate change is and what it's caused by. I myself find myself a little confused, so I'm wondering, do you know what climate change is?
I'm going to assume it's when the climate changes.
I know of climate change.
Well, I guess I'm not entirely sure, but I thought it had something to do with things like pollution and polluting our environment.
Changing of the weather, and specifically, it just keeps climbing up.
The atmosphere is like heating up and stuff like that.
I don't know, man. It's like as the temperatures heat up, it causes like wider effects other than just temperatures heating up. I think that's my understanding of it.
Do you have a minute to talk about climate change?
Legs, arms, body, legs.
This doesn't feel like an activity I can do while holding a microphone. I'm gonna give this a shot. So I saw you do your legs first, and then oh my God. Do you have a minute to talk about climate change?
I think climate change is the effect of obviously a changing climate. It is the planet warming. It is colder winters and hotter summers. The seasons changing, getting a little slower each time going around, and carbon emissions and all that jazz.
Well, part of it's to do with the ozone layer, obviously. A lot of it's with the carbon that you get from cars and washing machines, dryers, stuff like that.
Do you happen to know what it might be caused by?
By fossil fuels, right? That humans are like burning up too much.
I just know that they also say it's caused by like pollution from like our cars and just like human interaction with the earth.
By us, no, like what we put out and all our emissions and everything we throw away and stuff.
Do you think that's caused by people?
Yes.
Yeah, personally, I do think that it's humans with all like so many cars driving around, so many factories, all that, like carbon emissions, and that's all from people.
After talking to some folks at Sonoma State, I felt like I had a better idea of what climate change really is. But I still wasn't 100% sure of the science behind it. What exactly is causing our climate to change, and how? To find out, I talked to Professor Hernandez Ayala, a climatologist and professor at Sonoma State University who studies the relationship between climate change and extreme weather.
First, I'm going to define what climate is, and then I'm going to talk about climate change. Right, so climate, we are talking about average weather conditions over a specific amount of time. When we average those weather conditions like temperature, precipitation, humidity, let's say over 30 years or more, then we're looking at a climate of a region. So we know that things vary, throughout the years, throughout the seasons. We can expect summers to be hotter than winter. So climate is those average weather conditions of a given area that give that area their unique kind of a characteristics in terms of temperature, humidity, precipitation. So when we're talking about climate change, those processes are not operating in their normal, right, cycle anymore with the ups and downs. Now they're going in one direction. They're going up. So we're seeing that climate change is a change in the normal pattern or trend of that particular weather variable that we're examining. And there's no other explanation other than, our human activities are dependent on fossil fuels, right? Because our planet every day, right, it receives energy from the sun, but it also emits energy back, right, into outer space, right? A lot of that energy that usually leaves the planet is now staying, in the planet because those greenhouse gases are preventing that energy from leaving, and then that is causing the increase in temperature that we're seeing in global average temperature. The most well-known is our carbon dioxide, also methane is a powerful greenhouse gas. And what those gases do is that as we continue to rely more and more on fuel, on fossil fuels, right, to power our global economy, then we're adding and adding more of these gases that are trapping more and more of this heat, and that's why we continue to see this trend. So if we want to say, is it real? Is it really happening? We only have to really look at the data. When we look at the solar cycles, volcanoes, plate tectonics, those factors can explain how the climate of our planet changed and evolved over the billions of years of our planet's history. But the change that we're seeing right now is such a rapid and significant change that just using those natural factors alone cannot explain. There's just no other explanation than the reliance on fossil fuels and how our entire global economy is based on fossil fuels. That accounts for a lot of the change that we have detected in our climate system.
My conversation with Professor Hernandez Ayala gave me a much better understanding of the environmental processes and human activities that create a warming planet. But this led me to another big question. If the science of climate change is so clear, then why haven't we been doing more to fight it? So I met with Carrie Fugit, programs manager at a nonprofit called Daily Acts that teaches leadership in making transformative environmental and social change. She helped me understand why climate change has been underaddressed for so long.
In the 1980s, fossil fuel companies started to understand that burning fossil fuels was adding carbon to the atmosphere and would in fact cause climate change. But they ended up having a huge investment into disinformation campaigns to confuse the public about the realities of climate change. So a long history of disinformation from fossil fuel companies is a major contributor to why it's still sometimes comes up as a question of, is climate change even real? Is the science even sound?
Not only were these campaigns effective in sowing doubt around climate science, but they had major financial resources supporting them. In the WNET Group's Frontline series on Big Oil, Kurt Davies, director of the Climate Investigation Center, states that from 1998 to 2014, Exxon alone put over $30 million into think tanks that were proffering uncertainty, that were questioning the climate science, questioning policies that were being proposed, really casting doubt on anything to do with climate change. In a term that is deep in our collective consciousness, the concept of our carbon footprint was actually coined by British Petroleum. BP first promoted and soon successfully popularized the term carbon footprint in the early aughts. The company unveiled its carbon footprint calculator in 2004, so one could assess how their normal daily life, going to work, buying food, and traveling, is largely responsible for heating the globe. A decade and a half later, carbon footprint is everywhere.
A lot of those disinformation campaigns were successful because people enjoy having cheap energy. It allows us to travel all over the world for all our vacations, allows us to have multiple cars per family. It allows us to have a fresh banana in February that came from South America. Part of the challenge is our systems have gotten used to this level of cheap energy. A big part of it is the culture of consumption. The cost of producing goods has dropped exponentially. Therefore, the production of goods has grown exponentially as well over the last 50 years. But the long-term impacts and costs of that are very expensive. We've just been externalizing the costs and kicking the can down the road for future generations.
While the impacts of climate change will definitely continue to become more severe down the road, Carrie also pointed out that there are lots of people who are already bearing the consequences of environmental damage, and have been for a long time.
Burning fossil fuels and creating fossil fuels creates a lot of pollution and waste. That waste has to go somewhere. Most of that has gone into communities of color, Black communities, Latinx communities, Indigenous communities. So these are called sacrifice zones. These are communities that have been, for all intents and purposes, sacrificed by the system. And those communities haven't been given the political power to say, no, we don't want these pollutants in our communities, near our schools, near our children. But you can't have a sacrifice zone without disposable land. And you can't have disposable land without disposable people. And you can't have disposable people without racism. So it's really important to make the connection between racism and climate change, because if it weren't for racism, we would have had to figure out a different way of dealing with the waste product and pollution of the fossil fuel-based industry.
Carrie brought up an important point. inequality and injustice play a big role in allowing climate change to continue. So while lots of our day-to-day activities as individuals have an environmental impact, we also need to understand that many of the problems that drive climate change are systemic. That is, they're rooted in certain social, political, and economic systems that are much bigger than any one person. So really, understanding climate change also means understanding the systems that are behind it. Phew, that was a lot of information. It seems pretty clear now that climate change is very real and definitely caused by human action. It's also happening really fast, too fast for the environment to adapt. But what's the big deal? So the Earth warms a few degrees and the weather changes. How bad could it really get? Well, it turns out pretty bad. Stay tuned because we're posting part 2 of Climate 101 in 2 weeks, where we'll explore some of the biggest impacts that climate change can have on the environment and on our day-to-day lives. Until then, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and leave a comment below to let us know what kind of content you want to see here. Thanks for checking out My Planet, My Voice. Stay loud, be heard, and let's save this planet together.